Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming President and CEO of World Food Program USA and moderator for the Leadership Roundtable, Rick Leach. President and CEO of Land O'Lakes, Inc., Chris Policinski. President and CEO of CARE USA, Helene Gayle. Vice President of Agricultural Commercial Operations Marketing for Bayer CropScience LP, David Hollinrake, and President of Elanco, Jeff Simmons.
Well, thank you, George Washington University, for hosting this. Thank you, Frank Cesno, for doing a stupendous job in pulling together such an incredible group. You've heard that there's 842 million people who suffer from hunger. So who are they? Who are those 842 million people? About 100 million of those 842 million are actually people who are impacted by crises, by emergencies, whether it be civil conflict or natural disasters. People moved beyond the borders of their country or displaced internally. About half of that 842 million people are actually farmers, small-scale farmers, primarily women, not growing enough to feed their family or generate revenue to buy sufficient food. There's pregnant women and young children. It's about 130 million school-aged children. While this might seem daunting and there are many faces of hunger, the fact is that hunger is a solvable problem. And I think some of the discussions today and what you're going to hear this afternoon points to some of those solutions. In fact, the international community is pursuing a range of very innovative strategies that are in fact transforming the effort to fight hunger. We now have the capacity through early warning systems to see the conditions that could become a famine and prevent it. You probably didn't hear about a famine in the Sahel last year. You know why? It didn't happen. The international community saw the conditions that were right for that type of a situation and prevented it. We actually have, I have a prop. You know what this is? This is a high nutrition paste. This you can take into the field, lasts months, doesn't need refrigeration, and this actually can transform the life of an infant suffering from acute malnutrition. It used to be if you had a child in that state, you'd have to have IV fluids. Now you just rip off a corner of this and squeeze it in the child's mouth, transform them. We have a capacity at the World Food Program actually to buy food from those small-scale farmers to be used to feed hungry people, a program called Purchase for Progress. Very incredible effort where by buying food from small-scale farmers to feed hungry people, you lift one group out of extreme poverty and hunger by feeding others. We also have another incredible innovation, the debit card. You probably have debit cards used regularly. We're now using debit cards to help feed refugee populations and displaced people. So for example, all around Syria now where you have people displaced around, whether Lebanon and Iraq, Jordan, and Turkey, they can use a debit card to actually access local markets for food. So this and use of vouchers more efficient and also bolster local markets. We have a set of different types of interventions, a defined list to help prevent malnutrition among the children in their first 1,000 days. There's a wide range of innovations. You're going to hear more about it from our panel today. So I'm going to stop here. But what I do want to do is actually talk specifically to the students because you, in many respects, are the key to the solution and our effort to, in fact, end hunger. So there's students from a lot of schools here, I understand. Are there students here from GW? And American University? Glad here. And where else? NYU. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
I said University of Oregon.
Wow. Welcome. Nice to have you.
Roger Williams.
Where's Roger Williams?
Rhode Island.
Roger Williams from Rhode Island. Actually, this paste, there's a company up there that makes this paste. So incredible things in Rhode Island in addition to you and your university and being here. What other universities?
Bridgewater College.
Purdue and?
Bridgewater College.
Bridgewater College, fantastic. And Purdue, I think you've been involved in the agriculture sphere in the past. Great to have all you here. So what can you do? I think there's a lot of things that students can do. One, innovate. You know, we create some of the best ways to solve problems through looking at issues from different perspectives. Your perspectives, which has created and transformed the way we all communicate, can help us figure out how to solve some of these problems. The other thing is to help us shape U.S. policy. It's part of your civic engagement. Raj talked just a few minutes ago about the U.S. Congress, about the administration. You can help us shape that policy. You can be engaged. We have, through World Food Program USA, lots of ways to involve you. We can provide information, strategy, materials. So join us in that effort. The other is, of course, you can help fund operations. And this cup is used in school feeding programs around the world. It's 25 cents to fill this cup. We bring this out because when we talk about school feeding, which is another transformative effort, people think about the tray with the apple, the macaroni and cheese, and all this. But in fact, most children around the world receive a cup of food, and it really, in fact, transforms their lives. So help us in all of these and any other ways, and you might have additional ideas, but there's someone from our staff upstairs who's handing out these cups, so please join us, pick up a cup, and join us in the effort to, in fact, end hunger. I'd like to turn it over now to Chris to discuss some of the incredibly innovative work that Land O'Lakes is involved in.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it very much. Yeah, I've been asked to talk about what's the most exciting innovation that we have going on at Land O'Lakes right now, and why might that innovation be relevant to all of you as students. And I'll give you two kind of catchphrases, precision agriculture and big data. And it might strike you as odd that I maybe sound a little bit more like a CEO of a Silicon Valley firm than I do a food and agricultural firm. But in reality, precision agriculture and big data are transforming agriculture dramatically as we stand here today. A little bit of background, just 15 seconds. You might think of us as the butter company, and why do I have an opinion around precision agriculture? And you're right, we were formed by farmers in the 20s to aggregate their supply and gain bargaining power in the channel and sell their butter. That worked pretty well, and in the 20s, farmers came to us and said, aggregate our demand and bargain for us for inputs that we use. In a sense, show us how to grow things. And if you turn the clock forward to today, we've grown quite a bit. We're still farmer-owned. We're a pretty big player, a $15 billion player in food and agribusiness. And the most innovative group we've got right now is in our crop inputs group, Winfield Solutions. It's about a third of our company. And what we've discovered is this whole conversation we've had this morning about growing more with less, farmers get it. They either get it because they understand what we've talked about. We're soon to have nearly 10 billion people on the planet. Or they just want to run their own businesses, they're entrepreneurs, they're business folks, increasingly efficiently and profitably. So in this crop inputs business, we've discovered we're a wholesaler. So we get to use the technology from lots and lots of different vendors. Monsanto, Syngenta, Bayer, Dow, and so on, Elanco. And we've discovered that there's a great business opportunity in showing farmers how to grow more with less. We've invested over the last handful of years in what we call answer plots and an expert seller model. Pretty simple concept. These are test plots. We've grown them from about 50 to over 200 in number that take and try all of the seed and crop protection and crop nutrient products in combination. So we have this amazing database that of what works optimally in any one climate, for any one soil type, for any one farmer. If you're in a hot climate and you want to grow a crop that hasn't been grown there and use the latest and greatest technology, we can show you the optimal agronomic solution for that. We can show you how to grow it. If you want to niche the market and you're a small farmer and you want to grow a boutique crop, we can show you what works there. And we've discovered something interestingly. It's not just agronomic advice that farmers are hungry for. It's economic advice and advice around sustainability. They get growing more with less. What we've got in these 200 answer plots, 204 to be exact, is the best research database in agriculture, bar none. Now, what do we need to do to understand that research? Big data. More like Silicon Valley than what your picture of agricultural practices might be. We've also discovered we can put edges on that. We can, with satellite imagery, with a partner company called Geosys in France, map in real time biomass production on farms to give them advice about their crop as it's growing. If there's a disease issue emerging, we can show them where it's emerging and how to treat that with just the right amount of crop protection products. Or if it's a wet year, we can show them with 20 years of history what happens in their farm in the lower quadrant, if you will, that doesn't perform so well in a wet year without special attention. Precision agriculture, big data. Last comment, why is it relevant for all of you here as students? Guess what we need? Talent. We're a lot more like Silicon Valley firms in our crop inputs division than what you might think of as an agricultural inputs company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Excellent. That was excellent. And Helene?
Yes, thanks, sir. And I'll follow up some of the comments that you made, kind of shifting to a different sort of innovation, if you will. Speaking from the standpoint of an international development organization that really got its roots in the whole issue of food. So how many of you know the CARE package? Everybody, and how many people know that CARE is the organization that first sent care packages? Very few people know that, but our roots are very much linked to that because we're the organization that after World War II was responsible for helping to provide food support to countries in Europe that had been devastated by World War II. We obviously have evolved since then. Europe was rebuilt, but CARE then became an organization really focused on trying to build assets of the poorest communities around the world. And a key part of that has always been our focus on food and nutrition security. But it's also changed a great deal. We're no longer in the business of handing out commodities, but really in the business of how do we really have an impact in a sustainable way on food production and ultimately on nutrition, and how to make sure that that's done in a just, stable, and equitable way. So looking not only at people and need for food, but how do we build systems that are equitable and really recognize that food is both essential for nutrition and nutrition security, but it's also essential for economic livelihood for many of the populations in which we work with. So let me just talk about 3 particular challenges that we face, and then some ways in which we're trying to innovate around those challenges. One is our whole system of food aid and how that's done. And I know Raj touched on that in his comments, but our whole system, which has been focused on providing U.S. commodities and oftentimes monetizing those commodities, is one that has had, in many places, a misuse of the way commodities are used, where yes, we know that commodities are very important sometimes in emergency situations, but aren't the way to build sustainable food systems, and have oftentimes actually led to a depression of local economic productivity. So that's one issue that we've tried to tackle. Another one is the fact that smallholder farmers, who make up the majority of farmers in places that we work in, and who rely on that for their economic livelihood, are oftentimes not linked to the markets that can give them a consistent source of economic livelihood. And then third, and Rick touched on this, is the fact that in most of the places that we work, women, smallholder farmers, do the bulk of farming, but oftentimes don't have the bulk of the inputs to make their livelihoods and make their farming most productive. And in fact, there's lots of statistics that say that if women have the opportunity to have the same inputs that men do, just that alone would increase agricultural productivity in the places that we work. So don't have a lot of time, but just to say, one, we're involved in several huge programs that are looking at ways in which we can shift the way food aid is done. Haiti is a good example where we're working on a project using things like the vouchers that you talked about so that people can actually buy food with cash as opposed to being given it, but purchase locally, which helps to increase agricultural productivity. So at the same time that we're giving people the opportunity to purchase, we're also making sure that those purchases are local and contribute to the economy. We're involved in multiple different projects around the world, but one that I can give a quick example of connecting smallholder farmers to market is a project that we're doing with General Mills. Well, General Mills in Madagascar with vanilla growers. Well, why? Because Haagen-Dazs is now a part of General Mills. We have a partnership with General Mills, Virginia Dare, who is a vanilla agronomist company, and CARE, working in partnership to connect smallholder farmers with the global supply chain of vanilla production in Madagascar that supplies 80% of the world's vanilla. So it's a wonderful way of connecting smallholder farmers with large markets. And third, through a project that we're involved in, funded by the Gates Foundation called Pathways. It's a program in 5 different countries that is collectivizing women, smallholder farmers, in the same way that you talked about your butter collectives, to give them the kinds of inputs and real-time training and capacity building so that women have the same sort of opportunities and the same sort of inputs to increase their productivity. So just 3 examples of ways in which programmatic innovation is trying to make a difference to solve some of the big problems and big challenges that we face. And just lastly, I would just add to the point about how students can be involved. We're very thrilled to have young people who can use their voices through some of the work that we're doing around advocacy, particularly around food aid reform, and hopefully we can talk about that more, of ways in which students can use their voices in ways that make it clear that you understand these issues and want to be part of bigger solutions. So thank you, and I look forward to further questions.
Thank you, Helene. And David?
Chris set up the discussion on agriculture in a wonderful way. He talked about the fact that we're moving from, a day of yesterday's farmer, the mom and pop farmer, to one that's highly scientific. And at CropScience, we have this program called Digital Farming that really is about moving the precision ag into a digital age. And rather than talking about that in detail, because it's much similar to what Chris described, I'd rather talk about what's needed to activate that. And talk about the situation within our business that I think you might find appealing. Agriculture is sexy. What we have to sell is awesome. We really are in the most exciting time that I've ever experienced. I'm 43 years old, raised on a farm, and I got to tell you, it is really fun to be in this space. And it provides opportunities probably for everyone in this room. Regardless of what your educational background is, if you have an interest and passion in agriculture and food, this is a great space to be in. And we've got a challenge. And traditionally, we've sourced our talent from wonderful institutions, Texas A&M, Purdue, Iowa State, Illinois, many great land-grant institutions. But our problem is they don't have enough talent graduating to fill the jobs we have available. Wow, what an opportunity for those of you that have an interest. In fact, over the next 3 years, there will be 55,000 job needs, professional, educated job needs in the U.S. alone, and only 22,000 graduates from the traditional colleges that we tend to go to. So we're reaching out to anyone that may have an interest in agriculture. We're doing that today. We've got programs in place in our company, and so do our customers, and so do our competitors, that really create an exciting venture in to ag. We're teaching you then the business of ag rather than the disciplines so that you can contribute and contribute very quickly. So I invite you to look at ag in a different and unique way, and I invite you to take action now. I think back to when I was in college. And my sophomore year, I happened to be working for the Dean of the College of Agriculture. And I was working in the placement office. And I saw all these companies coming in and interviewing students. And I thought, I'm a sophomore, I shouldn't interview. But you know what? I did it. And I learned that very quickly I could take an internship and get a step ahead of other people. I did that. I took a semester off. I went down a unique path. The next summer, I had the opportunity to work for Sumitomo in Osaka, Japan for 3 months. I guarantee you I would not have had that opportunity had I not taken a chance to get involved in an internship program when I was a sophomore. I invite you to look at these companies, look at what we have to offer, and please, if you have an interest, ask us about it. We probably have an opportunity for you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Jeff?
I'm speaking to the students today, to all of you specifically. I want to just emphasize, a lot's been said today, and there's no question, I think our greatest shortage to this story of feeding the planet, which is, this story is going to end positively, is not water, it's leadership. And I think it was just mentioned by everybody here, we need you now. And my goal in the next couple minutes is stimulate your thought. You don't necessarily have to agree with me. I think courage isn't just standing up and speaking, it's sitting down and listening. Okay? I want to highlight three things. First of all, I've worked 25 years. We're innovators in meat, milk, and eggs. But I jokingly say, I spent 12 years of my life. Don't just get a job, because I got a job for 12 years with Elanco. The last 13, after living in Brazil, and for the first time seeing a face that hadn't been fed, and a 6-year-old girl 3 feet from me, that wrecked me and wrecked my wife. And I said, if I'm going to be a leader in innovation in meat, milk, and eggs, no more of this. Please make this a cause of yours. And doing that, you won't work. And that's the kind of leader we need. We don't need you to come and get a job in this industry. We need you to come and lead. And you don't need to agree with everything that's been said by me or anybody else. Are you with me? That's point number one. Two is these faces, I think, matter. Just jump. I have a couple slides. I'm sorry, I hate slides, but I got to show you something. Next slide, please. Can somebody help me here? I don't like to. Look at this. This isn't just hunger. I think we've numbed ourselves with hunger. The UNICEF commercial, the 25,000 that die every day, we get it, but how many have really seen that? Not many. I went to try to find that. I found it. I found somebody that was dying. Malnutrition, worked for a pharmaceutical company. That's, yes, the collapse. But there's, I think, 5 other faces. This is not hunger. This is food security that we're going after. And it goes all the way to a girl I met in Africa that's never had meat, milk, and eggs. She was truly living on rice and beans. That's the deficiency. To the hunt, kids I'm playing soccer with that are just regularly every day. That's the real Hunger Games, looking for food every day. Not going to die, but looking for it. Then it moves to worlds we can touch. The edge is, do you know how many Americans and Europeans that are 1 paycheck away from, 2 paychecks away from a crisis that are in a food bank? The collapse. And then the one that really hits me. I work for one of the largest diabetes companies. The solution to diabetes isn't insulin, it's better food. And these urban trading a soda bottle for 99 cents for a $3 gallon of milk, we got to make that $3 gallon of milk more affordable and more accessible. And that to me is important, the quality. Obesity is our problem, and it fits into this food security, as well as the tradition of food. There are 6 faces to food security. It isn't just the hunger we don't relate to. So you see a face every day that's connected to this. Get to know them, and it'll become a cause, not a job. Are you with me? That's number one. Jump ahead here. I don't have time for any of this stuff. Quick. My other challenge is this. There's a window here. There's 3 numbers to remember. The good news, the story that isn't being told, is we're living in the fastest middle-class growth in the history of man. 3 billion people, almost, while you're in your first third of your career, will come into the middle class. 3 billion people. They're going to want meat, milk, and eggs. They're going to want that. The other is that means they're going to want better diets, which means 60% more meat, milk, and eggs. And as you heard from Jason Clay, oh, by the way, we crossed in August, I think the 27th, our time where we've used up our planet. We're using overtime right now. We're on a planet and a half. So to Chris's point, we have to do this smarter and better. Not freeze our footprint, but reverse it. I think that's key. So I end simply by saying, because we're in dairy, I use an example. I get real practical. You all drink on average 3 glasses of milk a day. Maybe it's yogurt, maybe it's pizza cheese. I don't know what it is, okay? We really only have 1 glass per person. There's a slide in here with that. We have we actually have 1 8-ounce glass per person. We've doubled milk. Companies like Chris's have doubled milk in the last 50 years, but we have 14% less per person today than we did. Population is outpacing productivity, and we're on 1.5 planets. That's a reality. So I always say we need 2 glasses of milk per person. We have 1. So let's just use that example. Okay, we have 1 glass. We need 2. And quite simply, you say, how do you do that? Well, we can do 66 million more cows. There's only 9 here in the U.S. But we can't do that. That's an option, more animals. That would take the landmass of Alaska, and that would take the water of the 3 major countries in Europe. Or we need this. That's the solution. 4.75 ounces more per cow per day. And we can do that. And that's being done all over. In some emerging countries and places in Africa and East Europe, they're adding 20 ounces per cow per day. And guess what the #1 innovation is? Access to fresh water. Vaccines, enzymes, productivity and practices that Land O'Lakes and other companies do. Good grains that come from technologies like Bayer. We need that, not 66 million more cows. This has a positive ending. We can do that. And I think that's part of the dialogue. Most importantly, we need you, not for a job, but for cause-centered people entering this industry.
I think what you're hearing is passion, and it's passion to address one of the greatest challenges of our century, a challenge that we can in fact surmount. I just want to comment on 1 or 2 things that were said and then pose a question to the panel. There was a reference, a very serious reference, to agriculture being sexy. And in fact, if you look at the people who've been working on this issue, some would say, I don't know, I'm not referring, of course, maybe others on the panel, but in just the last short while, we've had Matt Damon at the UN talking about hunger. We've had here in town Christina Aguilera talking about how we can address the 1,000 days. And this is a true story. Shakira actually drove Howard Buffett's tractor out in Indiana, helping look at ways to address hunger and fighting and helping small-scale farmers surmount the challenges. So it is, in fact, sexy. And we don't need placement officers here, even though you're hearing there's lots of opportunity. It's a matter of signing up and joining the cause. And it's incredibly exciting. And we in our organization have been able to work with Helene and CARE in mobilizing students and people throughout the country, which I think in the next 30 days we're going to find is going to be successful in ensuring that legislation, this Farm Bill, actually is going to produce a good result as it pertains to some of the food aid reform issues. I think one of the issues that everyone touched upon was the systems that need to be in place to promote food security. And I would just ask the panel, just identify one big challenge/opportunity that can be presented to all of you to help us figure out how to resolve. So if I may, we'll start with you, Helene, and then work our way around.
Yeah, well, I think partly creating the systems means looking at different kinds of partnerships and looking at how we get past our divides of, private sector, government, civil society, NGOs, et cetera, and really think about what's the whole continuum from people eating to the productivity chain, and do a better job of that. And I think we're starting to do more of that, where we're looking at, pulling different kinds of partnerships together. The example I gave you about the work that we're doing with vanilla producers is just an example of how you really look at the whole system and putting together different kinds of partners. I think we have worked too much in silos. I think companies have worked in their own separate silos, even just within the private sector. But then not looking at how a government agency like a USAID or FDA and others can really come together. FDA, agriculture, come together to really look at developing those kinds of systems and looking at where are the synergies that I think we haven't done as good a job of, and where are some of the big gaps and obstacles. I also think, again, thinking about how can we get students involved, I think we ought to be, getting some of this out of the hands of the usual suspects. Throw out some of these challenges, get some contests going, get some new ideas and new thinking into it, because I've been very, very impressed with how crowdsourcing and those sorts of things have helped those of us who sometimes have on blinders see beyond our own borders and think of very, very new ways of doing things.
I agree, and the blinders, I can understand that very well as I try to move into digital aid in my office. Jeff?
I'm going to go a different direction. I think the greatest thing we might need is our world has changed, so we need to know what the consumer want. has changed. Let me just follow me here. I grew up in a generation, and my parents definitely did, that the CBS News is what we thought the consumer wanted. Today, it's social media. You can today understand how many media mentions, Frank's already been referencing this, how many media mentions there is on a certain technology or a way of agriculture. And I think we must shift our way, and we must advance our approaches to understand really what consumers want. Remember, we live in the 3%. The average income is $7,000 a year. And 50% live on about $2 a day. So we have the keys to the answers, but we live in a bubble. So we got to measure what consumers want differently. So from an unaided, an aided question survey to an unaided, headlines to social media mentions, going from just call lines, inquiry lines from a major retailer to actually looking at SKU data. Our world's advanced, how we measure consumers must advance. I think this is critical. I went last year in April to a major U.S. meat meeting, 650 people in the room. Guess how many were using social media? 20. We've got to advance ourselves, our generation, all generations, and your generation's got to help us. And we can understand a consumer. I think that's critical because I think the consumer wants safe, abundant, affordable food.
That's great.
And we got to be very careful at 3%.
Chris?
Well, I think related, I think the biggest challenge we face is communication, quite honestly. I think it's fantastic that we have as much interest in food and food production as we do right now. I think that is the single best thing that could be occurring. We now need to inform that interest with facts and ground it. And in a sense, that's looking at not the headlines of what might get shouted, but in fact, what is the consumer marketplace looking for? And in fact, what drives the kind of future of food that we want? And to do that, I think it's things like today. We need to be much more inclusive. We need to listen. But we also need to have our minds open to facts and science, not opinion or not a shout, but facts and science leading us to the right kinds of answers. I think it's imperative right now. And I think it's imperative because, frankly, we're in Washington, D.C., so I get to say this. Public opinion really does shape public policy. And if we've got uninformed opinion about the food industry, I worry about having a public policy that we'll regret. So communication, I think, is the biggest challenge we face, and I think it's the biggest opportunity if we get it right.
That's great.
Yeah, I agree that communication is the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity. One of the things that we're doing locally that we need to figure out how to scale is we're bringing a program into schools where folks don't really have an understanding of how their food is grown. I'm talking grade schools. It's called Making Science Make Sense. And it's a hands-on opportunity for folks to really learn about how food is grown, how companies like ours contribute, companies like food companies contribute. And it really gives people a different perspective of what we face. And the challenge we heard earlier is it's real, right? So the 2% and the 98%, 2% of the people that are participating in agriculture and the 98% that are consuming agriculture. We need to reach beyond just the school-age children and into public with a program like that. The other thing I would add is we need to collaborate. We have a tendency, any industry does, to think if it's not invented here, then we shouldn't perhaps try to participate in that. We have to look across all of our competitors. We have to understand that our little $1 billion investment annually is not enough, nor is any of the other companies that are participating in this. So I really think we have to share resources, share technologies, and think about how can 1 + 1 = 4, rather than how do we compete every day.
That's great. Thank you. And consistent with reaching out beyond, look to Frank now, who I think is taking some questions not only here, but also from throughout the country, if not throughout the world. Frank?
Well, I'm going to leap to my feet. It wasn't exactly a leap, but... And I want to engage the audience, and I want to bring other people into this conversation. I want to start with our farmers. Where are our farmers in the audience? Oh, gosh, you're going to make me work for this, huh? All right, let's come... Here's a close farmer. Stand up. All right. What's your name? Where are you from?
Okay.
Oops.
Vernon Hurst. I'm from the state of Pennsylvania, just 20 miles north of the Mason-Dixon line.
All right, so you've just heard these folks talk about leadership, innovation, all the rest. What does it look like from the farmer's perspective? What do you have to say to these folks and to these students? I got it.
Oh, okay. Well,
I got the mic.
you know, as a farmer, I have a passion to feed hungry people. I don't care if that person is standing right next to me or down the street or over across the water somewhere in some third world country. But I need technology and the use of technology to produce this food.
What kind of technology are you talking about?
Well, everything we've heard here today, from GMO crops to technology like we were talking about, as far as precision agriculture, is very important for me to comprehend and be able to use.
Okay, you got any questions for these folks? You got any challenges for the students?
Well, one challenge, you know, we heard, I'm a small farmer, and
How small is small?
Well, that's
How many
that's
acres? How
where
many cows?
I'm getting to.
Okay. No milk for me.
You know, we have this comprehension that it's small versus large farmer, and I think we need to get above that. We need it. We're all needed, and because the large farmer can do certain things that I can't do as a small farmer, and I rely on the large farmer for inputs in my farm too, and so you know, we need to get over that comprehensive thinking that it's all about small farmers.
How much technology is on your farm?
Okay, well, I milk my cows with a robotic milker.
What's a robot? Anybody seen a robotic milker? Okay. How many have not seen a robotic milker? Tell them what a robotic milker is.
Okay, well, the cow voluntarily walks into a stall. I don't think this is on.
It helps if the microphone is on. You have a robotic milker, I can't turn the mic on, okay? Who's productive here?
Okay, this cow voluntarily walks into a stall, and through technology, the computer washes the cow's udder and attaches the milker unit and milks the cow, and takes it off when the cow's...
No Mr. Green Jeans.
No. And also, through the GMO crops, I'm able to practice more sustainable agricultural practices like no-till. I can no-till my farm, crops into my farm, and grow my crops in a practice called no-till, where we do not have to disturb the soil, which protects the soil from erosion. We've seen that picture this morning of water or ground erosion going down the stream and into Timbuktu's water supply. In this area, we talk about the Chesapeake Bay Foundation a lot. And so it's important for me to use those kind of modern practices to protect the bay. I mean, that's what we're doing.
How long have you been doing this?
Oh, well.
All your life?
Yes. I live in the same house that I lived in since I was 12 years old.
Your family in this before you?
Yes.
How long has the farm been in the family?
Well, actually, my mom and dad bought that farm in 1968, so I'm 58 years old.
Happy birthday. Okay, thank you very much. How about some other farmers or students? Anybody want to be part of this? Why don't you come on down the aisle here? And Jeff, I'd like to ask you, you know, you're up here, and I heard your story about Brazil when I heard you speak another time, and it's very powerful. And let me be a jerk here and say, is that real? I mean, is that real? Or is that something that makes you a more effective CEO? Or both?
You cannot wear a title in today, I believe, in whatever you do. If this isn't personal, then the sustainability of whether you're coming to Washington to talk about a policy or whether you're saying, you know what, I think there's a way we can remove needles to you know, in animals, or come up with the next thing that could be either more customer embraced and more natural, or what's the next, you know, breakthrough technology. You can't have that resilience and persistence and win in life if it isn't personal. That's we got to have cause-centered people that are more committed and even convicted than this is hey, let's go through it. The world is too competitive. I think that's critical. You know, I've said, hey, if you don't believe food security is happening, you know, a lot of the U.S. meat drawer and milk is globally owned because people are looking at food security. They're going to find the food if they even have to come back to America. So I'm sorry, is it real? It has to be, and it has to be personal. You're darn right it is.
Helene, Rick, I have to say, and to the students here who've gone and studied abroad or been abroad, my daughter went to Honduras. She worked with orphans and street kids. She came back a changed person. Yeah. When you watch it on TV or you hear people talk about it as the dutiful thing to do, that's fine. When you go and you touch it and you see it and you meet it and you greet it and it's a kid and it's someone, a human being, just one human being, it completely changes your connection to it.
Yeah.
Frank,
well, let me say, oh, sorry, I was going to say, and coming from the person who spends most of my time focused on the global issues, I also think that we've got to think about the fact that we have poor people who, in this country, who are not getting enough
in
food.
this city.
In this city. And I think, oftentimes it's easy to think about the problem over there, and I dedicate my life to that, and I, definitely want us to remember that as the richest nation on the face of the earth, we still have an obligation to be generous to people all around the world, and it's not their problem versus ours. That said, I think we also forget the fact that we have hungry here in America that we're also overlooking. And it doesn't take a plane ride to go down the street and look at the face of a person who doesn't get enough food here in America and remember why these issues are so important and carry that with you as well.
So let me go right from that and challenge some of the students in the room, some of our students, some of our media students, Michael Scully and the Roger Williams students and some of you others who've made videos. Go make videos about people here in this country, people who live 3 blocks away. Make that's something that mainstream media aren't doing very much of. When was the last time you saw a story on television about hunger in America? Hunger down the street, all right? Your neighbor. That would be a powerful video if you did that right. It's not the first time it's been done. Yeah. Do it differently. Yeah.
All right.
Sir.
Yes.
You are?
Steve Harnish.
From?
Pennsylvania again.
Farm?
Dairy, alfalfa, corn.
Okay. So what have you heard here today in the space of innovation and feeding the planet that's sort of struck you? How do you see yourself playing into that? Questions you've got for this crowd?
It got personal when Mr. Simmons shared the challenge to get 4 more ounces of milk. I can get 4 more ounces of milk per cow. The reason...
Your cows be angry at you if you
No,
do that?
they'll be all right with it. The reason we got a couple farmers showing up for this conversation is because it's important to us. We have a self-interest in seeing that the dialogue that goes on regarding the future of agriculture includes our views. And normally our priority is getting crops out of the field and getting the cows through the milking parlor or whatever, getting the job done. And there's not a lot of folks that have time to go out and advocate and get in front of the cameras or in front of the crowd and say something. So I appreciate the invitation. And
so how do you get that extra 4 ounces out of your cows, do you think?
Technology. There's whatever tools you give us, we can use. So if diesel fuel is $2 a gallon, we'll use so much of it. But if it's $20 a gallon, we'll find some other way to doing it. If we have technology available that'll improve the genetics of both our crops or our animals, we'll use it.
All right, so there's your guy there from Elanco. Talk to him. Have the conversation. You have something you want to ask
I
him?
appreciate just the products that the folks that are here have available to us. I guess I would hope that we make smarter policy decisions going forward that both allow us to produce sustainably in order to meet these goals of having a sustainable production system, but also it's got to work economically.
Steve?
There was, if I can add real quick,
go ahead.
there was some discussion earlier before lunch that I wanted to stand up and say, hey, that's a great idea. It's a great goal that you have at the end. That method's not going to work unless the farmer can make a living off of it. So yeah, it's great to have this, and maybe there's a niche market for it, but we can't all convert to that unless it works on the bottom line.
You have anything you want to say?
I think he mentions a good point. Sustainability has to create value. If it's not sustainable, these can be great incubator ideas, but you're going to have to find a way to create value, or it won't be sustainable. That's real innovation. It's just an idea.
Let me ask all of you and you, because there may be some in the audience that say, oh, I see, technology, you get an extra 4 ounces out of my cows. Are we back to messing with nature? Are we doing something that's going to endanger our food supply? Are we putting some kind of chemical into our animal and into our milk to create this extra supply that is a trade-off that we should know about?
For me, when you look at a graph of the productivity of farms, there's some that are in the median, and there's some that are on the more productive and some less. You don't need to move the whole thing to being more productive. You need to work on the bottom half that can use technology, that can improve the methods that they use. And if they move, we're going to get that 4 ounces easily. But they got to have the tools available and know about them.
Anybody?
Well, I think here's where we have to use, make sure we're using facts and science to look at production practices, because I think sometimes we think about innovation and it's always the latest and greatest and biggest technology. It doesn't have to be. It might just be better herd management. It might be better forage. And I think giving farmers the choice, because I think farmers are pretty smart folks, giving farmers the choice around how aggressive they want to be with technology or not is really a big part of the answer. In fact, I think in general we need to make sure there's good choices for consumers and for farmers up and down the food supply chain. And you know, the reality is technology is scary in any industry. It means change. So we have to have a breadth of technology adoption, I think, to make this work. So you might, folks want to think immediately that technology is going to be imposed on everybody. We heard from a small farmer this morning that said technology is very important to them. They're using robotic milkers on a small farm. It's not just big farms that benefit from technology. It's all shapes and sizes of technology for all shapes and sizes of farmers.
Steve, how long?
Frank, if I
sorry.
can just add to that, just the complete perspective as well, and that is when you're looking, for example, at a small-scale farmer in Uganda, we're not talking about GMO as much as a berm for better irrigation, spacing of seed, access to credit, a warehousing operation, drying of grain. So there's a wide range of innovation, and it doesn't all involve, quote, technology.
Steve, before I let you sit down, how long have you been doing this farming thing?
I was born and raised on a farm. They gave me some responsibilities starting at 9 or 10 to get the calves fed. Been active in ownership and management since '07.
You like it?
Yeah.
You recommend it for other people?
Anyone that has the skill set that's needed and also the ambitions needed, go for it.
What time do you get up in the morning?
4:25. Need to be there.
You just lost the audience. I said we'd talk to some students, but we're going to get all the students down here and open it wide after our next panel. So let me throw it back to you, Rick, for final thoughts or any conclusions you got.
Well, I would just go down the panel, and we've listened to some of the dialogue, some of your comments. Any final thought that you want to share with the students, with our farmers, with those who are participating? Starting with you, Chris.
Well, my thought would be that we need to be more inclusive and open-minded. You know, often we pit, and we heard it a little bit today, large against small, or folks who want to be aggressive with technology or not. And the reality is we need all of that. It's not one or the other. It's not large or small. It's both. We need large farms to produce lots of food at a safe, high-quality food at an affordable price. We need small farms to niche the market and keep rural communities vibrant. We need all sorts of technologies from, in the developing world, some basic agronomic practices, on-farm management practices, to folks who are deploying the latest technologies and helping feed that soon-to-be 9 billion people. So we need to go from one or the other to using the word and being more inclusive in agriculture and the food industry.
That's great. Thank you. Lee?
Yeah, I guess I would say one of the things that for me resonates with this whole discussion is the importance of having a discussion. And I think that the kind of dialogue around this very, very critical issue is one that we really haven't had. And it's why there are so many misperceptions. It is why I think we have so many silos and stovepipes, and why there's so much mistrust that develops. And I think having these kinds of dialogues where we bring together different types of partners, and as you said, it isn't one or the other. It's really understanding that what we're trying to create are whole systems, and systems that go from the consumer to the producer and include the range of partners. You know, government has an important role for, you know, regulation and safety and all those other issues. Consumers have a huge role. The producers have a huge role. So I just think, you know, having these kinds of dialogues and breaking down some of the miscommunications that I think have really developed as we've had this information overload, but in ways that sometimes I think haven't been constructive around how we really solve this problem to feed the planet, and it's only going to get tougher over time. So
That's great. David?
I agree, and I'd like to build on that. I mean, the reality is we within our industry have not done a very good job of describing the benefits of the science that we bring. And the realities are, it takes about 10, 12 years to introduce a new crop protection product, and about $252 million. It's a massive investment to bring solutions to farmers to help them fight these real challenges. And we need your help. We need everyone's help in describing a better story of what we're doing to enable increased food production. The other reality is it passes EPA, FDA, and USDA approval before we ever bring something to the marketplace. It's sound science, but again, we need your help in really helping people understand the benefits of this science and the fact that it is sound. Thank you.
Exciting time right now for all of you. You're living between the 7 and 9, these billion people. The story does, though, change a little bit. Population will flatten. There's places like China, Japan, France, where population is already going backwards. This problem isn't infinite. We have the solution. I sit around a table with cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. They don't have the answer. This is one of the biggest problems, and we do have the answer. The gap is leadership. That's what we need from you. I think everyone, the thread through all this is we need a dialogue, not a monologue, and as an industry, we haven't done a very good job. We got to get out of the science corner. We got to make sure it's right, raise the bar on ourselves. But there's an environmental, a consumer, a moral, an animal well-being corner. We got to go in those all. Don't close your minds. We can't either. Let's keep this dialogue going. Thank you to the university for this opportunity to have this interaction.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to Frank. Thank you to GW for allowing this dialogue to ensue. And just to say in closing that hunger is in fact a solvable problem. You're hearing about it, and we welcome your passion and involvement in getting us to that solution. So thank you very much, and thank you to the panel. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, folks.